Greetings to all of our change makers, and it is so wonderful to be with you again, and wonderful to be able to bring to you one of our friends from across the pond on the other side of the world. And Jenni Rock, we are so blessed to have you with us today. Please give people a little understanding of who you are, what you do, and what makes you so amazing.
Oh, thank you, and so thank you for inviting me. So my name is Jenni Rock. I am based in the UK, and I'm a co-parenting breakdown recovery expert, which is a very long-winded title that basically means that when people and the relationship breaks down for whatever reason, I work with the parent who wants to walk. So quite often they get divorced and they expect everything to get better, but it doesn't. All of the problems were are still going to be there, and the level of tolerance for those issues suddenly they're getting separated, they're divorcing. Why should they have to bow down to the other person now? Why should they have to be so under? So it gets quite often where those two parents can't communicate at all. And it's a complete breakdown, and they'll argue over a paperclip. I mean, it gets very, very silly sometimes. So when you have two parents that are children are the ones that suffer, and that's very much why I do what I do, for to work with the parent that wants to. So the one that just can't understand why they're still fighting, the wishes that the other person would just communicate with them. And I do that because I've been there, I've been in that situation, escaped from a very abusive marriage when our son was 3. And at the time, that actual moment of break, ex decided that it would be a use our son as a human shield so that he didn't get arrested for assaulting me. So I took my son. He assaulted me whilst my son was holding my hand, stood in the kitchen, and that for me was the final straw. You know, what happens when the children can't hear or see it is one thing. What happens in front of them, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I don't. He then took the son in the garden, human shield. We had him threatening the police with a chainsaw and an 8-stone. Put it this way, a very big German Shepherd, a German Shepherd dog, which is the type of police use for taking down criminals. So he thought that would be a great idea. I had no idea what was. Well, I do know what at the time was. Basically, he couldn't bear to lose, and he would do whatever it took to make it. And unfortunately, it backfired. But the person that suffered the most was our son. So we obviously had a very difficult co-parenting relationship where he continued to be very manipulative, very demanding, and very narcissistic. And I basically just kind of kept it up and just trying to keep the peace because I didn't want my son to live in a war zone. So it was easier to keep the peace, whatever it took, than to actually take a stand because I didn't want the war. I didn't want my son to have to deal with the war. And in hindsight, since was that wasn't necessarily the best approach because nothing was ever going to change whilst I didn't. However, our son had a bit of a breakdown, I suppose you would call it, at 14, and 4 months later, he was still in bed with a migraine. It lasted for 4 months, that migraine. And He's 23 and he has continued completely debilitating migraines. He can't work. He is severely impacted. He lost the last 2 years of school. He spent 5 years at college, having to live in a college to try and get his that he needed. I suppose you would call it like the GED, the basic ones that he needed to be able to function in society. And we're still working on getting him into any normality in terms of being able to live a normal life. So it's still a work in progress. They say the children don't understand, or the children don't hear it, or the children don't see it. They do. Because my son at 14 said, I don't be when I'm around my dad. I don't like that person. I don't want to be that person. I choose to be the person that I am when I like that person. And he made it very clear. And his dad lost an amazing son because of his behaviors. And to think that could have been avoided, you know, but my son at 23 is still paying the price, and made me determined that I needed to become the person that I had needed during all of that period.
Mm.
Because I didn't know how to manage that kind of behavior. It was completely alien to me. I didn't know how to handle the conflict,
Mm.
didn't know how to do any of it. And even though I was a professional, I was a bank manager for a lot of that time, and I ended up walking away from that career because I couldn't cope.
Mm.
All of that, the toll of all of that stress and behavior didn't just impact on my son, but it impacted on me as well. And I broke down where I walked away from a career, a 20-year career, because I couldn't cope,
Wow.
because of the complex people holding on to, even sort of 10 years later. So it breaks people, it does. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be breaking them. It can be breaking them much further down the line when they don't even realize that they're falling apart.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Wow.
it kind of sneaked up on me, and it sneaks up on other people too. So
That
yeah.
incredible story. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine the horror that you and your son must have gone through with him using your child as a human shield. That is I that just chills me to the bone to think about that situation. Holy cow. So I'm really curious because I know I've had a few experiences with people that I would consider to be quite narcissistic, and they're usually pretty good at drawing people in and getting them to believe that all is good and wonderful until it's not. So I mean, I don't understand how they're able to do that, but how are you able to help people make a break from the torture that they're going through? What kind of advice are you able to give people based on your own experience?
Yeah, it's quite often, in fact, in 100% of cases so far, I've been the worst example. So it's been
Oh, wow.
so, I've been the worst example. So I think the first part of the problem is that the person that wants to break free of this war is so beaten down
Mm,
by the whole situation that they don't believe that they can end the war
yeah.
and what they can do, and they don't realize that they do have the power to change it, because at
Mm,
that point in time, so down, and it's very much you have an abuser and the abused, and it is the abuse that I want. And the very first things that we on is unpacking everything that's happened so that we can get rid of it.
Mm.
So it's processing that trauma, processing all of the bad stuff so that they can let it go. Because that's essential. And we often talk about forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. You have to forgive everybody to be able to heal. You have to forgive them to be able to move on. You have to be able to forgive yourself.
Yes.
That's the most important part, is being able to forgive yourself, because there is a lot that goes into this in terms of, it's my fault. It's my fault that we're like this. It's my fault that we're not together. I broke up the marriage. It's my fault that our children are suffering. It's my fault. Because they've been told it's their fault for so long,
Yeah.
that they believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And unpacking all of that, also being able to identify that red flag behavior so that they can actually see it for what it is, tactic, as a tool to beat them with, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we generally 4 weeks is working on what's happened, where are we at, why are we there, tell me all the dirty secrets. It's fine, it's okay, this is your safe space. And then the second sort of stage, once first stage, the second stage is now that they've emptied their bucket of all of the guilt and all of the trauma that they've been carrying, getting back up to the bucket with confidence, with skills, with tools and tactics and strategies and plans of what happens. This is how you can deal with it. And when that happens, this is how you can manage that. And it means that they're able to place healthy boundaries, and they're able to provide that child with a safe, responsible adult, an emotionally safe person. And that child, 99 times out of 100, will gravitate towards the safe person rather
Mm.
than the unsafe person. Because
Right.
that's what drives all of us, the self-preservation. So if a child has a choice between an unsafe parent and a safe, they're going to gravitate towards the safe parent.
Mm-hmm.
So there is always the outside possibility that the other parent will be able to manipulate that child and will be able to um, alienate that child from the parent, and what we then hand is like, okay, why has this happened? What is going on behind the scenes with your child, and how do we wait it out?
Mm.
So how do we actually work on ourselves whilst we actually have the freedom to, because at that point the child is with the other parent. So how do we use that time effectively to actually work on ourselves to become an emotionally safe person, so that
Mm.
when it's eventually come back, it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years, but when that child come back, then we are a safe, an emotionally safe, an emotionally mature person that we sit down rationally with that person and talk through what happened,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to want answers. They've normally only heard one side of the story.
Yes.
And actually, when my son asked me what happened, I handed him the newspaper from the day
Oh,
and an
wow.
unbiased report. So
Wow.
one of the things that I do suggest to people when they are being alienated is send your child, well, set up an email and send your child, whether it be daily, whether it be weekly, fortnightly, whatever, and don't open that email. Send your child. So you're sending it to an email address that when that child is older, you hand them the email address and the password, and they can, those emails that you sent to them, they can see that they're date and time stamped, and you are telling them every email, every time that you love them, for them, that you're missing them, that you're thinking, I saw a butterfly today and I really wished I could show you. The colours on that butterfly was absolutely amazing you, and hope that you were safe and happy, you know. Just having that kind of, if you like, to give that child that they weren't forgotten, that they were loved,
Mhm.
that they were cared for, that has prevented you from with them during that time.
Wow. Wow. Whoo!
So, to
Wow.
any parent that's alienated from their child, is still love that child, because they're not to blame. They're as much of a victim in this situation as you were.
Mhm. Absolutely. Wow.
So
So yes,
they're
there's
choosing this particular moment.
definitely two different layers of challenge there, between being able to separate from the other
Mm,
parent and then being able to work on healing whatever with your child. I mean, goodness gracious. So you have quite a handful of things that you're working on helping a parent to be able to deal with, and I think that is just so amazing. So
yeah.
God bless you that you had to go through what you went through, but thank the good Lord you are using the knowledge you've acquired to pay forward and help other people. I think that is truly a blessing to many, I'm sure.
It's such a reward to be able to see the transformation of that person.
Mhm.
To see a guy that I worked with a couple of years ago. I worked with him again recently. Just he just wanted a little block of booster sessions, which we did, and him a couple of years ago, and he came to me having attempted suicide, which quite a few of these people do. He had actually tried to hang himself the week his guitar strings, and he is now making the decision that it is not safe for him to maintain contact with his children for their sake and for his, because allegations that the other parent continues to make that are false. It is not safe for him to continue to be accused of things that he hasn't done. Um, it does put his freedom at risk, continue to make allegations, and it is not healthy for their children to see that kind of behavior and escalation. I will no longer be physically with children. I will continue to FaceTime them on a weekly basis, but it is no longer safe for me to do physical um,
Mm,
visitations. And he's had to look long and hard about making that decision.
mm,
He's okay with that now, because he is saying, he has now moved out from his parents' house, basically sofa surfing. He has got his own place that he can live in, that he has rented. He has built his own business. He is scaling up his business. So, and he is working on himself so that when his kids come back to him, which they will, his kids come back to him, he will be able to be the dad that he wants to be for them.
yeah.
And that kind of
Wonderful.
transformation from a guy that is and suicidal and feels that there is no reason to live anymore,
Mm,
to actually become at peace with just letting go of one aspect of their relationship for his own safety, prioritizing himself so that he can be a better parent in the bigger picture
right.
for his children, because he will not be incarcerated under
Mm,
false allegations.
right.
And that was a really tricky decision to make, but he's okay with that.
Mm. Mm, Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story and that example,
Yeah.
because that is so powerful. And I know I've seen some of those situations and some of the accusations that people make that are just designed to set them up to look like the winner of everything, and to try to get
Mhm.
somebody else out of the way is just it's just horrifying what people will do to each other. So thank goodness you're doing what you're doing. I
Yeah.
think it's a beautiful thing. I'm curious, do you have any big visions for the future? Where would you love to see this work take you?
I think my ultimate vision would be a world where I was no longer needed to do this, to
Mhm.
be the best outcome ever. However, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case in my lifetime. Someday, never know. But for the time being, I am actually working with a coach in Ohio, and we are in up a community for these parents, one for mums, one for dads, separating the two out into different sort of biological standpoint because they have different needs.
Mm,
Um, and having a support, having a weekly session where they can actually go to actually learn new strategies, to offload whatever's happening, to be able to space and that freedom and that safety,
mhm,
to be able to, instead of just survive, start moving towards thrive. Where we will do annual, do amazing things with these people, um, to give them life after, rather than a very empty, downtrodden, painful life after we
mm,
start to thrive. So we're in the process of building that up. Um, but it's still very much in the early. I firmly believe that working with others is definitely a better way to wide audience rather than trying to do everything on my own. So
mm,
that's the goal, would be that we do annual retreats where we are able to do it on a almost like a, I don't know, we fund retreats, and we choose people that are going to attend the retreats, and they get a free um, vacation with work that we throw in whilst we have them, and they are able to come in one state of mind and leave in a very different state of mind and state of
wow,
being, really, because what happens in their heads impacts on every area of their life.
definitely.
So impacts their
Wow.
careers, it impacts their families, everything. So
Yes.
yeah, that's the goal.
Mm. Well, please let people know, how can they find you?
Certainly, and my website is www.coparentingwithoutconflict.com. So it's all one word. There's no gap, extra spaces. Parentingwithoutconflict.com. So that's the easiest way to find me. There is a contact me button on there, and a page on there where they can actually access the books that I've written. So I'm now up to 4 publications on Amazon, books that are written, and one of which is a co-parenting log that makes it easier to hand over the child rather than having to stand and have a. You can just write it all down and hand it over with the child.
Mhm.
It avoids a lot of conflict.
Wow, that's the goal, right?
Absolutely. It's I don't want kids to have to grow up seeing this, because
Mm-mm.
they just continue thinking this is the normal thing to do when they get divorced,
Mhm, mhm.
you know?
Yep.
So I don't want them to have to live that way.
No, no. PTSD for young people is real, and some for many, it doesn't even take the level of trauma that your son went through to feel that, because there's just
Mm,
so much fighting and division and stuff going on in the world. That's why my husband and I are very involved in suicide prevention kinds of events and education, just trying to help people understand, the role that they are playing in creating all of this trauma, and that we all can work together and be able to reverse some of this. So thank you, thank you, thank you for the work you're doing. It's absolutely amazing.
Mm.
So do you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave people with today?
Okay, so my final word of wisdom would be, even when you think your child, they are. Everything that you say, I want you to think about, if you had to start in, say, 10 years' time, would that give that child the visual of you that you would want them to see? So think about how you're presenting yourself, as if the child is viewing and judging the way that you are behaving from their.
Mm, okay. Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule today, Jenny. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. And
You're welcome.
again, thank you so much for the work that you're doing to help parents to be able to do a better job with their children, and regardless of what's going on in the family as a whole. And thank you for helping to save the lives of both parents and children, because I know that is ultimately what you are doing. So thank you. And thank you to all of our change makers for tuning in today. And we will see you all in the next interview. Have a marvelous day until then. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.